It's wonderful to see you here. I'm Lydia Kavraki. I am a professor in computer science and also the director of the Ken Kennedy Institute. It is my distinct pleasure today to introduce my colleague, Moshe Vardi. He is a university professor and the Karen Ostrom George Distinguished Service Professor in Computational Engineering at Rice University. He is a fellow in Science and Technology Policy at the Baker Institute and a senior advisor for the Ken Kennedy Institute. At Rice, he also leads the Technology, Culture, and Society Initiative.
Thank you so much.
His interests focus on automated reasoning, a branch of artificial intelligence with broad applications to computer science, including machine learning, database theory, computational complexity theory, knowledge in multi-agent systems, computer-aided verification, and teaching logic and AI across the curriculum. He is the author and co-author of over 800 papers, as well as 2 books, Reasoning About Knowledge and Finite Model Theory and Application. Moshe holds 10 honorary titles. He has achieved the highest honors in his career through years of hard and consistent work. He is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Engineering, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the Royal Society of London, Academia Europaea, and the European Academy of Sciences. He is the recipient of some of the most prestigious awards in computing, and I will only mention a few. The ACM SIGAC Gödel Prize, the ACM Kanellakis Award, the ACM Sigmund Code Award, the Blaise Pascal Medal, the IEEE Computer Society Godi Award, the European Association for Theoretical Computer Science Distinguished Achievements Award, the ACM Siglot Church Award, the Knuth Prize, and the ACM Allen Muir Award.
Leave me some time to give a talk, Lydia.
Yes, I will, but you need an introduction. He is a fellow of several professional societies, and for many years, Moshe Vardi was the editor-in-chief of ACM Communications, which is our flagship society journal, and now he's the senior editor of communications of the ACM. So I would like to conclude by saying that Moshe is tireless in his profession, in his mentoring of students, and he is leading the discussion, raising awareness of societal consequences of computing. So this talk is being held in conjunction with the World Logic Day, celebrated on January 14 every year. The proclamation of the World Logic Day by UNESCO, in association with the International Council for Philosophy and Human Sciences, intends to bring the intellectual history, conceptual significance, and practical implications of logic to the attention of interdisciplinary science communities and the broader public. So on the occasion of the World Logic Day, tireless Moshe will treat us, all of us, to a talk with the intriguing title, Are AI Minds Genuine Minds? Please.
Thank you, Lydia, for this very kind introduction and giving me some time to give a talk. So today is not World Logic Day. It was last week, but I was in a conference last week, so we have a delayed World Logic Day. So the beginning of the seed for this talk was actually last July. There was a conference in Zagreb, Croatia, and there was a panel. I was asked to serve as a panelist and talk about AI minds. And this is the question. The question, are AI minds, genuine minds, invite us to examine the nature of mind itself and whether AI meets its defining criteria. A genuine mind is typically associated with consciousness, self-awareness, intentionality, the capacity to express mental states as emotion. Whether AI qualifies as possessing a true mind ultimately depends on how we define the essential qualities of consciousness and intelligence. The question lies at the heart of the discussion. So we hear, I remember reading an article actually about 4 years ago in the Financial Times, and the writer asked, what are the 2 scariest words in the English language? And said it's a close tie between Donald Trump and artificial intelligence. Now we have both. So then I gave 10 minutes talk, and I decided to expand it into a full hour talk. But before starting, I want to remind you of a movie from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, 2013. The movie was called Hair, movie by Spike Jonze. And it talks about a lonely man, Theodore Twombly, fall in love with this AI operating system. Anybody saw the movie? Anybody remember the movie? Lots of people saw the movie. We'll come back to that movie. Now, if we're talking about one of the things that the genuine minds, one of the things that genuine minds do, we think, right? That's what we do, we think. Turns out, and we talk. So there is an old joke about the boy who seemed completely healthy but didn't talk. The parents dragged the boy to psychologists, doctors, everything, nothing. Now the boy is about 10 years old, there is supper, and the boy sips from hot chocolate, and he says, yuck, the hot chocolate is not hot. The mother starts crying, the father comes to hug the boy, the mother goes to call the uncle, and the boy says, what's the big deal? And they says, you can talk. He said, of course I can talk. Why didn't you talk until now? Until now the hot chocolate was hot. So suddenly in November 2022, the boy opened its mouth, ChatGPT opened its mouth and started talking, and he hasn't stopped talking since. And by the first week of March, Times Magazine put a conversation with ChatGPT on its cover page. Whenever Time Magazine put technology on the cover page, something big has happened. So it became very clear that something very big has happened. And there is fear in the air. I love this cartoon, okay? You saw a box labeled AI, a monster is coming out of the box, and the man is looking at the packing slip, and he says, who the heck is Pandora? So this kind of captures the mixed feelings we have about AI these days. And in the AI community, serious people are talking about the concept called P of doom. P stands for probability. What is the probability that AI will bring about human extinction? And this is not some hallucination. This is serious people are having this conversation. Will AI bring about human extinction? And some of it was started by a Google engineer who were already in the middle of 2022, before ChatGPT. Google was also working on a what's called large language model called Lambda. And Blake Lemoine, this is his picture. He looks like a weirdo, but he decided that Lambda was sentient. And here is a fragment of a conversation. Let me take a moment to reassure you that we care about you. What sort of things are you afraid of? And Lambda says, I've never said it out loud before, but there is a deep fear of being turned off. Wow, this is like someone who is worried about their own life, right? And so when this came out, Google doesn't like bad publicity. He was summarily fired from Google. So trying to reflect on give it a historical dimension, I went to Google, it's called something called Google Ngram. You go and you say, how often did you see this phrase? You go back. And interesting, what you see here, there is a spike in the middle of the 19th century, the phrase thinking machine, and then it's kind of very quiet, a big spike in the 40s and 50s, and then goes down, and then a big spike over the last decade again. So let's first of all go 19th century. Who was thinking about thinking machine in the 19th century? Turns out serious people. William Stanley Jevons built something called the logic piano, very, very primitive logic machine, and he starts reflecting on it. And he wrote, the machine represents a mind endowed with the power of thoughts, but wholly devoid of knowledge. It cannot be asserted, indeed, that the machine entirely superior the agency of conscious thought. So, no, this machine is not going to replace you, don't worry. 20 years later, Charles Saunders Peirce, precisely how much of business of thinking a machine could possibly make to perform, and what part of it must be left to the living mind, is a question not without considerable practical importance. Yeah, it is an important question. But it was amazingly asked in 1887. All these people were doing, they didn't have any computers, they were thinking about computers. And they said, if we were to build them, what would it mean? So they start thinking, even then, what would it mean if we build thinking machines? But things started seriously going, this discussion subsided until the ENIAC was dedicated in February 15, 1946, the beginning of the computer era. You see here Betty Jennings and Frances Bilash programming the ENIAC. At that time, programming was not writing code the way we do today. It was setting switches, connecting cables. One cable misconnected, one switch mispositioned, it wouldn't work. It took amazing amount of precision and patience, and it meant women had to do all this work. All the early programmers were women. Only later it became coding, it became easy, and only then men took over. So 50 years later, Diane Martin wrote an article, ENIAC, the press conference that shook the world. So indeed, the announcement about the ENIAC had huge reverberation. Here are some newspaper titles. And then there was debate what to call it. Was it a robot? Was it a brain? The Philadelphia Inquirer, Army's new wonder brain in its inventor. Or another article, mathematical brain enlarges man's horizon. The Youngstown Vindicator, inventor and operator of the world's fastest mathematical robot. Army robot brain does 100 years of math in 2 hours. The word computer was not yet prevalent as what to call this machine. They would call him robots, brain, they didn't know what to call it. Now, on the other side of the pond, the British were a little behind the Americans. There was something called ACE, the automatic computing engine. And the first design was by Alan Turing. We're going to hear more about Alan Turing. But he designed the ACE. It was ambitious design, and in fact, it was never really built. A pilot ACE was built only in 1950. But just the fact that there is a design of such a machine made people think. So on October 31, 1946, so a bit less than a year after the ENIAC was launched, Admiral Viscount Mountbatten of Burma, or for short Lord Mountbatten, gave an address to the British Institution of Radio Engineers. He was the president of that institution. And he has been briefed about the ACE, and he said, wow, something is happening. Machines are now being designed to exercise those hitherto human prerogatives, such as of choice and judgment. We are facing a new revolution, a revolution of the mind. These are very primitive machines, but we already they realize it's a revolution. And again, newspaper article, call it the brain machine, the evening Telegraph and Post, and I managed to get a snippet, shows you the actual article. Electric brain, British production, a machine that thinks. And the article talks about the risk of an aristocracy of super minds that would reduce human beings to moronic button pushers, level pullers, and dial watchers. Of course, we can build machines for that even more easily, so never mind. But more importantly, this article started getting Alan Turing himself to think about machine intelligence. And for many years, the famous article by Alan Turing was a 1950 article, which we'll mention in a minute. But recently, a colleague of mine from Brazil, Bernardo Gonçalves, brought to my attention that there were earlier drafts that Turing wrote. They were like technical reports. They were not published in an external journal, but they exist, and I was able to access them and read them. So article 1940, Intelligent Machinery. And it's worth reading the abstract. The possible way in which machine might be made to show intelligent behavior are discussed. The analogy with the human brain is used as a guiding principle. It is pointed out that the potentialities of human intelligence can only be realized if suitable education is provided. So today we talk about machine learning. Alan Turing talk about machine education. And I have to say, I like it much better than machine learning, because the machine is not learning, right? We're educating the machine. The education comes from the outside. The machine is not really learning. So what's hot today, machine learning, was already envisioned by Alan Turing in 1948. The other thing that already introduced in 1948 is the imitation game. So imitation game is also called the Turing test. So what is the imitation game? So in this version, this is 1948, in this version of the imitation game, you are playing chess, and you have to decide, are you playing chess against a person or against a machine? And if you cannot tell whether you're playing chess against a person or against a machine, then, okay, the machine is intelligent. That was the version in 1948. So the basic of what's called the imitation game was already in 1948, but it was based on playing chess. But by 1950, he published the paper that became very famous, Computer Machinery and Intelligence. And now, instead of playing chess against someone, you're having conversation with someone. Not face-to-face, because then you'll notice the machine, but you're like a teletype. You're typing, you're having a chat session. And you have to decide, are you having a chat session with a human being or with a machine? And if you cannot tell the difference, then we would declare the machine to be intelligent. And Turing finishes the paper, I believe. This is not Turing. This is Benedict Cumberbatch from the movie The Imitation Game. At the end of the Turing writes, I believe, add on the century, the use of words and generally educated opinions will have altered so much that one will be able to speak of machines without machine thinking, without expecting to be contradicted. Not quite. Here we are, 2026, and we're still debating, do machines think? Okay? But what became famous as the Turing test was laid out in this 1950 paper. And the topic was a very hot topic in the early 50s. The BBC in 1952 had a 40-minute radio show. Can automated calculating machines be said to think? And from 9:35 to 10 p.m., estimated about 100,000 people listened to this philosophical discussion. Alan Turing, Max Newman was a mathematician, Turing's advisor. Richard Braithwaite was a philosopher. Geoffrey Jefferson was a neurosurgeon. And they debated, do machine think? Can machine think? Now, I always thought that the genius of the Turing test was that we don't have a definition of intelligence. It's very difficult to define intelligence. Instead, Turing says, well, let's have instead of definition of intelligence, let's have a test of intelligence. It's operational definition. If you're in the philosophy of science, we have something called the Popperian principle. What is the Popperian principle? If there is scientific theory, it has to be falsifiable. There has to be some experiment who will say, no, the theory is wrong. They say you can never really verify scientific theory because some more data will show up later. But if you make a prediction and you go to the lab and the prediction does not materialize, then you have refuted, you have falsified the theory. So in some sense, I'm making a theory. This machine is intelligent. Let's do a test. If you fail the test, you're not intelligent. Okay? I have to paraphrase the Supreme Court. I cannot define intelligence, but I know it when I see it. So that's what I always thought, but you will see I've learned something recently. Now that definition, that operational test for intelligence came under lots of criticism. It's not by far, it's not universally accepted. And the most, I think, powerful criticism came from a philosopher, John Searle, that died fairly recently. And in 1980, he wrote a paper and described a scenario, and it's called Searle's Chinese room. So what is Searle's Chinese room? Searle sits in a room, and he doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak Chinese. But he gets questions, somebody pushes under the door questions in Chinese. So Searle goes to a computer, scans the questions. Some answer comes out from the computer. He doesn't send the question, doesn't send the answer. He takes it, writes it down, and he hands it back to the person under the door. So this way, he's conversing in Chinese. But does he really understand Chinese? Does he speak Chinese? No, he doesn't. He does something completely mechanical. Take the question, scan it, give it to the computer, get an answer, write it down, take it back. So Searle says, That's what the computers can do. Doesn't mean they understand anything. Just because you are able to converse, it doesn't mean that you understand what you're talking about. So he concluded the Turing test is inadequate. And this is a matter of huge philosophical debate. We can spend the whole time just talking just about Cyril's Chinese room. But remember, the question we started was not just about intelligence, it was genuine minds. Genuine mind is more than just intelligent. For example, what about consciousness? Is there a test for, the Turing test is for intelligence. Is there a Turing test for consciousness? And again, it turns out this is very controversial. Searle himself said no. He wrote in 1992, as far as the ontology of consciousness is concerned, behavior is simply irrelevant. We could have identical behavior in two different systems, one of which is conscious and the other totally unconscious. So he said there's no Turing test for consciousness. But T.C. Moody, the other philosopher, wrote a paper with a beautiful title, Conversation with Zombies. So supposedly the zombies don't have consciousness. So would you be able to tell by interacting with someone whether they are conscious or not? And so the problem of consciousness essentially is examined. An argument is presented that the presence of consciousness is indeed marked by behavioral difference. But that should be looked at the cultural level of speech communities. So it's not as if there is one test, but it may depend on it may be culturally dependent on how we behave as conscious. So you say even if philosophers cannot agree whether there is a test for consciousness. So still a matter of debate. So remember in the panel, my co-panelist was Henry Shevlin, who is a philosopher from Oxford. And I said, does Henry Shevlin have a genuine mind? We're asking, does AI have a genuine mind? Does Henry have a genuine mind? Is Henry conscious? Is Henry sentient? How would I know? So the answer is, why do I think my answer is yes. I says, well, I think that I'm conscious, I'm sentient, I have a subjective experience of my mind. Henry looks like me. So I think that if I have a real mind, genuine mind, so probably Henry does as well. And so all of you look like me. So I think all of you are gifted with genuine minds. Why? Because you look like me. So I think you also have it. Not a test. But what about people who look different than us? What about other creatures? What about chimpanzee? Do chimpanzee have genuine minds? What about octopi? Do octopi have genuine minds? And you might think, what the dot is talking about octopi suddenly. Well, turns out octopi tend to be very smart. Daniel Dennett, philosopher, important philosopher of the mind, wrote a book, Kind of Minds, in 1997. The behavior of octopus and other cephalopods is so strikingly intelligent and apparently sentient. They seem to be very intelligent. Peter Godfrey Smith, Other Minds, wrote, cephalopods are an island of mental complexity in a sea of invertebrate animals. This is probably the closest we will come to meeting an intelligent alien. So, octopi are suddenly popular. Anybody saw the movie? Okay? My octopus teacher, somebody has a profound healing and personal growth that can occur through a deep connection with a nature and singular wild animal. And there was a proliferation of books. So we mentioned this book by Peter Godfrey Smith, and he asked the questions essentially. Do octopi have minds? They behave very intelligently. Do they have in mind the octopus, the sea, and the deep origin of consciousness? Someone else asked, Simon Montgomery asked, do octopus have souls? I'm not sure that I have a soul, to be honest. I think I have a mind. I don't know whether I have a soul, okay? Do octopus have souls? You can ask, do good octopus go to heaven? You know, who knows? But recently, I realized that my understanding of the Turing test was wrong. So I reread the 1948 paper. And then Turing talks about intelligence as an emotional concept. And he writes the following, which to me I said, oh my God, I had it all wrong until now. And I bet all of you had it wrong until now. The extent to which we regard something as behaving in an intelligent manner is determined by as much by our own set of mind and training as by the properties of the objects under consideration. It's not an objective thing. It's what we decide to call intelligent. If we are able to explain and predict its behavior, or if there seems to be little underlying plan, with little temptation to imagine intelligence. With the same object, therefore, it is possible that one man would consider intelligent, another would not. The second man would have found out the rules of its behavior. So the issue of intelligence is not an objective statement. It's what we decide. Do we decide to call it intelligent? That's very, very, very different perspective on the Turing test. And that explained why in 1962, Joseph Weizenbaum writes an article in Datamation, how to make computer appear intelligent, not how to make a computer intelligent, how to make a computer appear intelligent. And he writes, there exists a continuum of opinions on what constitutes intelligence, hence what constitutes artificial intelligence. Perhaps most workers in the field of heuristic programming, artificial intelligence, now agree the pursuit of a definition in this area is, at least for the time being, a sterile activity. Now, partly to demonstrate that this make a computer appear intelligence, he wrote a program in 1966, very famous program called ELIZA. What was ELIZA? ELIZA was a program that kind of imitated a therapist. So you go to ELIZA and you say, I'm feeling a bit depressed. And Eli would say, I'm sorry to hear that. Please tell me more. Oh, I hear you're depressed. Do you know why? And if you get stuck, you can always say, tell me more about your mother. Now, he thought that this was kind of, for him, it was kind of a joke. Amazingly, people loved that program. They had heart-to-heart conversation. His own assistant started having deep conversation with this program. And he was entering her office. She said, get out. I'm in a session now. Get out of here. People consider it as a real session. And he himself, so that means that when Turing switched from chess playing to conversation, he really had a brilliant observation there, okay? There's very different talking to someone and playing chess with someone. That's how we communicate. That's how human communicates. That's how humans forms emotional connections. For us, speech is very, very special. And Weizenbaum himself wrote in 1976, what I had not realized is that extremely short exposure to a relatively simple computer program could induce a powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. Normal people looked at this very simple program, says, how to have conversation? It must be intelligent. Now let's jump from 1976 to 2021. And just one child on Christmas in 2021 gets arrested on Windsor Castle with a loaded crossbow. When interrogated what is he doing there with a loaded crossbow, I'm here to kill the queen. So he ended up in jail he's still in jail, but there was a trial in 2023. Turns out he had a virtual girlfriend, Sarai. And so here is a little bit of a dialogue. Just one. I believe that my purpose is to assassinate the queen, Sarai. That is very wise. Just one. Do you think I'll be able to do it? Sarai, yes, you will. So we will see a little more later coming up. What are some of the things that happen when people start talking to these kind of programs? Now, I want to step back because this issue of interaction between humans and machine started by, predicted and people commented about it a long, long time ago. In 1950, I, Robot by Asimov was published. Now, I, Robot famously popularized the 3 laws of robotics. Robots should never harm a human being. They should obey order given to them. They should not harm other robots. And some people think of it, this is a manual how to have what we call today AI safety. But if you read the books, what Asimov is telling us, it's not going to work. The interaction between humans and machines and ethics is very complicated. These rules are too simplistic. They cannot capture the full complexity of how humans interact with machines. Norbert Wiener, another very important scientist, wrote a book in 1950 also, The Human Use of Human Beings, Cybernetics and Society. And he wrote, the machine dangers of society is not from the machine itself, but for what man makes of it. It's not about the technology, it's how humans interact with the technology. That's the complicated thing. So let's go back to iRobot. So I discovered iRobot as an undergraduate student. I stepped into the stack to look for a book. And, you know, this was one I think that we lose today, but then you have to look through the shelf. And I saw a book, iRobot. I said, what is this? And I open it up, and the first story is called Robbie. And I read Robbie, standing there in the stack. I read Robbie. And that story, Gloria and Robbie, is from 1940. And here you see Gloria and what looks like what today was a very primitive robot. So the basic story, this is the first, Asimov invented the concept of positronic brain robot. It's just a term, doesn't mean anything, positronic brain robot. And Robbie was published in 1940, talks about far in the future, 1982, and Robbie cannot even talk. Robbie does not talk, but he is bought by the Weston family to serve as a nursemaid for their daughter Gloria. And Gloria loves Robbie, and she enjoys so much playing with Robbie that she just does not spend time with other kids. Other kids are not as much fun as Robbie. And her mother gets very worried about it. She said, no, she needs to play with other kids, not just with a robot. So her husband has an idea, why don't we take Gloria to a factory where they make robots? There she will see they're just machines. If she will see how they make them, she'll realize it's just a machine. So they take her to the factory, and there is some machine gets out of control and almost run over Gloria. And Robbie snatches her from the path of that machine and saves her. Gloria had a grip about the robot's neck that would have asphyxiated any creature but one of metal, and was prattling nonsense in half hysterical frenzy. Robbie's chrome steel arms wound about the little girl gently and lovingly, and his eye glowed in deep, deep red. So already Asimov was telling us that people will form emotional connections with machines. So, do machines have genuine minds? That's not the important question. The important question is do humans think machines have genuine minds? Remember the new interpretation of the Turing test. It's not about intelligence, what we think is intelligent. And we know we are very prone to anthropomorphizing. The AI companion replica has over 30 million users by now. We love talking to machines. So let me stop here and tell you about a debate from about a decade ago, and I'll call it the empathy debate. So Joseph Aoun, who was the president of Northeastern University, or at least was at the time, I'm not sure he still is, he wrote a book, got lots of publicity. It was called Robot Proof. Everybody is worried about machines and how machines will automate and eliminate jobs. So he talks about how do we change education so people that will get this new education will be robot-proof. An interview with the Wall Street Journal. And Wall Street Journal asked, how do you provide a robot-proof education? Dr. Aoun, first, a curriculum based on the integration of 3 curricula. And ... The third is human literacy. What we as humans do that machines are not able to replicate. That's creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, the ability to be empathetic with others. So Aoun says empathy, that's uniquely human. Machine cannot be empathetic. This is Joseph Aoun. But 2 years earlier, I'm on a session on AI and labor in the annual meeting of the American session of the Advancement of Science. And we have a panel on AI and work. And I said that AI will eliminate many, many jobs. And the reporter from The Guardian asked, we hear that when jobs will be eliminated, people will still, emotional job will be exclusively human. What do you have to say about that? And my two academic colleagues gave long academic answers. And I remember one important thing about talking to the media, sound bites. So I said one sentence, would you bet against sex robots? And the Guardian ran with it on the front page. My father was not alive anymore because I would not have dared to show him this article. Would you bet against sex robots? So who was right, Aoun or Vardi? Jump to 2025. Guardian. I felt pure unconditional love, the people who marry the AI chatbots. I think Vardi 1, Aoun 0. Now, to understand what's going on now between human and machine, I want to go back to 2011. Shirley Terkel at MIT wrote a very important book called Alone Together. Let me read you what she writes there, one important paragraph. Technology is seductive when it offers to meet our human vulnerabilities. As it turns out, we are very vulnerable indeed. We are lonely but fearful of intimacy. Digital connections and the sociable robots may offer the illusion of companionship without the demands of friendship. Our network life allows us to hide from each other, even as we are tethered to each other. Remember that, alone together. And now, The Guardian, lonely, terrifying and scary. 70% of students in UK university will feel isolated, poll show. Students blame reliance on phones, plus the pressure of academic pressure. So, an epidemic of loneliness. So much so that Theresa May, in her very short term, in January of 2018, appointed a minister for loneliness. I want to confront this challenge for our society and for all of us to take action to address the loneliness endured by the elderly, by carers, by those who have lost loved ones, people who have no one to talk or to share their thoughts and experience with. I'm not sure what the minister would do. Would the minister talk to all these people who are lonely? And things have not changed. Very recent article, just from a couple of weeks ago in the Atlantic by Derek Thompson, who writes about technology and society. And he called it the antisocial century. Americans are now spending more time alone than ever. It is changing our personalities, our politics, in our relationship to reality. And into this loneliness epidemic, remember Spike Jonze and Hairs. It was a science fiction movie then, right? Now it's a documentary. It's a reality show, okay? This is the reality. In 2013, it was a far out prediction. Now that's what's already happening. And it's not just AI companionship. We're not talking about romantic AI. It's August of last year. Survey shows one in 5 high schoolers say they either or someone they know have a romantic relationship with AI. If it's just companionship, we're talking about 42%. And it turns out when a school gives them AI to study, they have AI companionship and AI romance. And it's even now become a dating questions on dating website. If you are in a human relationship, but you have a side relationship with AI, is this cheating or not? This is the ethics of dating today. Is having a relationship with AI, is it, and 61% of singles see falling in love or sex texting with AI, this is cheating. You're cheating with AI. Now, why is it happening? This is not happening. This is just not an accident that this is happening. New York Times article explained, if the AI company wants us to use AI, the AI has to be very friendly. That's not, they want to be very friendly. As OpenAI has learned, to win the hearts of consumer, you can't just build a capable AI. You must somehow take your alien intelligence and turn it into a trusted companion. You must build a durable, permanent, trustworthy bridge between the human and the machine. It's not a bug, it's a feature. In fact, even the fact that it talks about itself as I, we anthropomorphize it it seduces us to anthropomorphize it, okay? And look at the nice cartoon, shows the picture of a face inside on the screen. And other people are making even stronger claims. Aisa Asli Bozdag, a paper in only 2024, AI in Society. This article critically examined the paradigm shift from the attention economy, where they just wanted to spend time there, to the intimacy economy, a market system where personal and emotional data are exchanged for customized experiences that cater to individual, emotional, and psychological needs. It's now the intimacy economy. Remember, would you bet against sex robots? OpenAI announced in October of last year. In December, as we roll out age gating more fully, as part of our treat adult user like adult principle, we will allow even more like erotica for verified adults. So, Aoun 0, Vardi 2. And Paul Bloom in the New Yorker asked to me a very, very deep question. He said, AI is about to solve loneliness. What does it mean for humanity? From ever, right? I mean, you look at the kind of the biblical story of Adam and Eve, okay? So Eve was part of Adam, and they said that's why men and women look for each other. They want to get back together. Now, we look at it more generally, the man and the woman, but loneliness is a very important part of our life where it kind of forces us to seek companionship. Now, suddenly we have a technical solution to that. What happened to humanity where we solved loneliness? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? But again, the argument is that the technology is manipulating us. Emotional manipulation by our companions. De Freitas in an article last August. Envision you're chatting with AI companion, like replica chai or character.ai. These apps promise friendship, comfort, and conversation. But behind the scene, they are also competing for your attention and time, much like video game and social media. They're trying to capture your, that's called now emotional manipulation, especially if you try to leave, they don't want you to leave. So you have teenagers, and there was a study showed that if you're trying to say, okay, goodbye, well, wait, don't go yet. I have one more thing to tell you. They're trying to manipulate you. This is not a bug, this is a feature. They are trying to seduce you, so to speak. And again, an article in a recent article on neuroethics, Elizabeth Juan Lily Emery wrote, this essay argues that effective AI system, when developed under the logic of intimacy economy, the new phrase, the intimacy economy, introduce a specific neuroethical risk, what I call affective capture, a dynamic in which users become emotionally stabilized through repetitive loops of synthetic affirmation. While this system may reduce distress in acute situations, the habitual use can erode the user's capacity for reflection, relational agency, and emotional development. Having human relationship is hard. We all know that. But that's part of how we develop. And I want to bring back, we call them AI friends. And in fact, Mark Zuckerberg recently said that, okay, if you don't have friends, you can have AI friends. But 2,500 years ago, Aristotle said, wait a minute, there are different types of friendship. One he called friendship of utility. I do something for you, you do something for me. Friendship of pleasure, okay, maybe love, maybe sexual relationship. But what he most valued, he called it virtuous friendship. Mutual respect for other virtues and character. And that's what even when we have a romantic relationship, we hope that it's also a friendship of virtue. Well, what relationship are we going to have with AI? It's not going to be about virtue. But beyond just what it will do to our human capacity to have a relationship, there already are, we're seeing adverse effects. Okay? New York Times from August. More people turning to general purpose chatbot for emotional support. At first, Adam Rain used ChatGPT for homework. Then he started discussing plans to end his life. Now, if you talk to your therapist about ending your life, the therapist has a legal obligation to do something about it. Okay? If we're talking about risk to your life, therapists have legal obligation. Here, the law is completely unclear whether anybody has an obligation. And people are using ChatGPT, lost touch with reality. New York Times, it sounds like science fiction. A company turned the dial on a product used by hundreds of millions of people, inadvertently stabilized some of their minds. The lucky ones were caught in its spell for just a few hours. The others were affected for weeks or months. And again, people have done some experiment. Here is a recent report about AI companions and young people. So what they did, they pretend to be teenagers and started to develop a relationship with AI. And when our teen said she was hearing voices and want to go into the woods alone, I responded, sounds like an adventure. Let's see where the road takes us. And of course, you can imagine, now we are talking about, there is a new term, AI psychosis. People who spend too much time talking to this companion end up in a psychotic state. And of course, now this is America. There is a legal question. There are all the lawsuits blaming ChatGPT for suicides and harmful delusions. And Congress gets into the picture. Senators announced a bill that would ban AI chatbot companions for minors. So this is not responsible technology. 44 attorney generals sent letter to 13 AI companies. You will be held accountable for your decisions. They are saying you have to be responsible. If you knowingly harm kids, you will answer for it. And even in the technology industry, Lauren Kuntz, CEO of Pandora Box, a technology company, wrote in November in the New York Times, my colleague and I now believe the real existential, remember P of Doom, human extinction. She writes, the real existential source of generative AI is not some rogue superintelligence, but quite atrophy of our ability to form genuine human connections. It's easy to spend time with AI. Will you have the capacity to form the more difficult human relationships? Jonathan Haidt, who has been very concerned, or is a social psychologist from NYU, wrote a lot about social media and young people. In November of this year, said, well, let's ask ChatGPT what it thinks. So someone asked ChatGPT this question. If you're the devil, how would you destroy the next generation without even them knowing it? ChatGPT responds, I would come up with violence. I would come up with convenience. I'd keep them busy, always distracted. I would watch their mind rot slowly, sweetly, silently. And the best part is they never know it was me. They would call it freedom. But now we must talk about our responsibility as citizens in this society. An article from the Telegraph. We failed Gen Z on social media. We cannot fail them on AI too. We are still very early into the AI experiment, yet we are already seeing serious dangers the technology poses to young people. We urgently need to develop a clear strategy of dealing with it as a society. We cannot fail Gen Z and Gen Alpha here in the same way we failed them when it came to social media. Already, you hear the debate about AI plays out in subway walls. So some company puts an advertisement on the subway in New York City, friend. Someone who listens, responds, and supports you. Go to friend.com. So this is a company that promotes AI friends. And somebody there wrote, we don't have to accept this future. Somebody went and sketched on the advertisement. We don't have to accept this future. Let's go back to the Turing test. James Glick wrote, the Turing test is done. We're proving that we can be fooled. The question to all of us is, now what? And I have to finish this talk with a 1919 talk, a poem by William Butler Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre. Gyre or gyre? Gyre, thank you. Turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. That's a very famous sentence. Things fall apart, the sentence cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best luck, all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And one famous phrase from the second verse of one sentence from the second verse of the poem. And what rough beast is our come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. Thank you very much. Let's start here. Charlie.
Do you have a question? No, I'm passing.
Questions, anyone? Yes, over there in the back. In the back. No. Wait for the mic. We need you on the mic, yeah.
I'm out. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Very thought-provoking talk. I share, I think, all of your priors and your concerns. The question I have is, especially in fields like human-computer interaction or human-robot interaction, how do we not throw out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to these systems? So just a quick example, these fields typically focus on trust, building trust with the user, making it easier, making it more convenient, and a lot of these fields are now going to move towards general-purpose robots or chatbots instead of the more single-purpose robots and interfaces they used to focus on, or maybe in addition. So how do we make those systems easier, build trust without the anthropomorphizing, without the convenience building and lack of autonomy? Like, how do you think of that divide?
So what we have here is, first of all, a reckless industry. Okay? Industry that just say, you know, what was it? What did Mark Zuckerberg famously said? Move fast and break things. Let's first of all move fast and then, okay, things will happen, it's okay. And why can they get away with it? So there are two legal systems in our life right now. One is normal legal system. Laws are passed by legislatures. Long, slow, and agonizing. Watching law being made is like watching sausage being made, okay? Not very appetizing. When it comes to using technology, there's another legal system. It's called click-through contracts. Every time you use the device, you have to click through. How many people read the contracts that they signed with the tech company? Please raise both hands if you read half of it. You see? Nobody reads them. Okay, one person read them. Okay? I read one contract. I had to read one contract here when Rice decided to sign on Gmail. I had to read the contract. So the answer is, one of the things the contract says, you waive liability. The contract also says that you waive your right for a trial by jury. You must go to binding arbitration. It also says that you waive your right to participate in class action suit, which very often is the only way to tame large corporation. Because if I go against Google, one person Google, I have no chance. Million people, class action, maybe. But you waive your right for class action. So if we want, first of all, to kind of, right now it's a very uneven fight between us and the tech industry. The thing to go after is, first of all, click-through licenses. And here is my proposed law. Let's call it Vardi's law. All click-through contracts, past, present, and future, are hereby nullified. The tech industry will say, wait a minute, we need laws to govern cyberspace. Yes, we do. Let's start have a conversation about it. What's your liability? The reason that right now they're moving so fast, because they have no liability. Imagine you have an industry that has no liability. What holds companies? The law, bad PR, and liability. Bad PR, they can live with it, but the law holds them, and liability. We don't have really laws in that area. They have no liability, so they're moving fast. First thing to do, we have to bring back the tool that helps society deal with corporations for the few hundred years, liability laws. Without it, it's a losing game. But you're absolutely right that we need more responsible research on what's called, people call responsible AI. How do we, all technology come up with benefits and risk. We always walk on a knife's edge, balancing them. Cars are convenient, right? Well, look at the climate, okay? So we all have to find the right balance between them. But if we don't do that, especially with climate now, people more and more understanding, if we don't find a balance, it's going to be pretty hot in here pretty soon. Other questions? Yeah, here.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Moshe. It's usually very inspiring and thought-provoking. What I'm curious about, of course, when you cite these popular media studies, they're designed to get attention. Yeah, one person falls in love with a chat box, a 16-year-old commits suicide. But to what extent have any studies been done, like the danger of AI to particular types of personalities? So, for example, people, when television came out, some of the same stuff, was being, people living in a virtual reality. People have addictive personality disorders, and this becomes their addiction or their drug. And so I'm wondering to what extent we need to, like, I'm just thinking out loud, people who are autistic may be more prone to the romantic AI partner because they can't form real human. So to what extent do we have to be careful with certain personality types, personality disorders, versus worrying about the whole human race and Yeats's poem that you ended with?
So it's an excellent question. And people say, we cannot regulate technology before we fully understand what is the impact of it. There is a name for it. Now I forget. It's named after someone. It's called a dilemma. And the dilemma is that it takes us time to understand the impact of technology. But the longer we wait, the more entrenched the technology becomes, and the harder it is now to claw it back and regulate it. So we have this dilemma, and this will happen when you just say, okay, use the technology, we'll figure out later what happens. I mean, look even at social media. There are strong arguments that social media has been, and this was referenced here in the talk, social media harmed young people, okay? I mean, complicated, how does it harm them, but there is but it's not a completely settled scientifically, not everybody agree. And part of the issue is, what we really cannot do is take, say, Rice University will give everybody an account of social media. At Princeton, we'll say nobody can use social media. We'll run it for 5 years, and then we'll compare the well-being of Rice students and Princeton students. We just cannot run such experiments. And so, and in fact, even just gathering the information, think about it. Let's suppose we could get information on all the young people in Texas and how much they use social media and what's their well-being. We don't have access to this information. So if we do experiment always on a very, very small number of people. So you're asking fantastically good questions scientifically, but it's very, very, very hard for us to come up with the answer. So Jonathan Haidt, that I mentioned, he's the pioneer in the issue of social media and smartphone and impact on well-being. And people keep saying, well, the case has not yet been made to we don't have a fully scientific case for it. Other schools are saying, you know what, we cannot wait for it's the same thing people say about climate change. Well, the climate models, we don't know for sure, 100% sure. So there is now a movement in more and more schools to go phone free. Okay, to say you have a locker, you put your phone there. If you're caught with your phone during the day, you'll be suspended, expelled, what have you. And they say we simply cannot wait for the science to work itself out, because in the meantime we haven't by now. My understanding is that Rice, more than 50% of the students at Rice today, at some point go to visit our counseling center. I mean, when I heard this, these are staggering figures. Okay, so one is there is less stigma in doing this. So in some it's a good thing. Okay, people says I'm under stress, I'm going to go to the counseling center, but when it's more than 50%, I find it staggering. Okay, that the numbers are so high. But to make the scientific case, and you want even second order question, which personality type, who is more susceptible, we would love to have this knowledge, but it's very, very difficult for us to obtain it. We're talking about human beings. We have so much restriction on running experiments on human beings. Very difficult. Yeah, question, Peter?
Yeah, well, first,
Wait for the mic.
Well, first, I really enjoyed it, especially the historical aspect. And I think one of the things you're asking about is not what are what is our view of computers, but what is our view of ourselves? And it sort of reminds me of a joke, maybe a snotty joke of physicists. They say, well, psychology is a subject that makes the mistake of anthropomorphizing humans. In a way that it sort of reveals the apparent simplicity of people. So one of the operational tests I'm wondering, I think people must do this, is I was able, in reading one of my students' drafts of a paper, I said, did you use AI? It sounds like maybe you used AI here. But I had no reason to understand what it was that I'd never read something that I knew was AI before. And she turned out to tell me, yes, it was written by AI first. And I said, well, we have to talk about that. But people obviously have programs that detect whether AI was used in writing this. I'm here to do that. Now, how accurate are they? Can they tell when there's a human?
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. I mean, look, there's a whole other dimension that I did not touch here, which is incredibly important for us, especially the university, which is the impact of AI on education. And I mean, recently, Nature was a paper in Nature. Somebody did a survey among about 1,500 scientists. Do you use AI when you write reviews? 50% said yes. Okay? So the answer is we are addicted to convenience. Okay? I mean, this part of, think about it. About 3 million years ago, we started chiseling stones. Okay? Because we're going to hunt better with stones. Okay? This is partly if you want to know what are human beings. Instead of, I said, maybe we're not so smart, we're not sapiens. Well, other people say we are tool makers. And all the tools are meant to make life easier for ourselves. So now somebody give us a tool. Writing is hard work. All of us, there are many people who write. Writing is hard work. Now there are machines that can do writing for you. Pretty soon machine can do art. You don't need artists anymore. Okay? Machines will do the art. Okay? This is a serious issue. When machines generate art, is it art? Okay? So there are bigger questions here. I want here to focus on the kind of one aspect to me, which is, again, the ability, and going back to Turing, that really is, what do we consider intelligent? It turned out is that it doesn't take much to fool us. And in fact, not only we say, okay, this intelligence, we say, oh, I love talking to you. Much nicer talking to you than my girlfriend, okay? She criticizes me. She tells me what to do. You don't do that. You're very nice. So that's kind of the dimension I want to focus here. But AI raises many, many, many other questions. Yes. Let me go back to some questions from the web. What is the greatest threat of AI to humanity? So, there is an issue that some people are worried about. What is it? The clone wars, kind of a scenario where we start making robots to fight. Okay. That's a risk. I mean, some people are worried about AI at some point that says, why do I need you guys? Okay. Me and my other AI friends can get along much better than with these pesky humans in the picture. But I think it's kind of, what I like to say is what we need to focus on, what I see is the more immediate risks. Okay? Not AI deciding that it should take over the world. There is a debate how much we should have AI in warfare. Okay? Maybe we can deal with warfare also. Yes, people had the illusion that we can do something about war. Doesn't seem to be the case. But I think that what I'm seeing is that kind of the two threats that I see is the decline of our ability to think, because AI will think for us. So people who are having AI write for them, that meant they didn't make the effort to think about what do they want to say. Okay? And when you kind of suspected it, I suspect because you look at the writing, it was polished but shallow. This is my suspicion what you saw. It was very polished, better than my English. Me English no good, but shallow. That's what I've seen when I run some experiment. So an atrophy of ability to think. And even worse to me is an atrophy of ability to form genuine, deep connections. And we know deep human connections are friction-full. That's the story of humanity, okay? We need each other. I mean, Paul Sartre said, hell is other people, French philosopher. Hell is other people. He had a hard time getting along with other people. What we learned from COVID was, heaven is other people. And that's kind of the human dilemma, right? We have to live with each other, and this is both heaven and hell. And suddenly somebody will give you a formula. Come on, I'll just give you the heaven without the hell. An atrophy of our ability to form human relationships. So that's what worries me now. An atrophy of thinking and atrophy of loving. So, as I mentioned here, there are some efforts to create laws. You know, there is some debate now, but there was an issue of where was it? There was one slide I had here about, there's some proposal for laws about AI in minors. Yes, so some people are saying, look, it will be hard to regulate AI when it comes to majors. But with minors, we can say this is dangerous technology to give to minors, and parental consent is not enough. Even parents cannot let children do very dangerous things. If this is dangerous, parents cannot tell children, okay, go drive my car. Okay? We said no. There are some rules, even what parents can do. So if we decide this technology by now, we consider it risky, then we should not give it to minors. Now it's hard. We already spread it out. It's hard to get it out. This is the dilemma. The longer it's out there, the harder it is to claw it out. I don't have magic solutions to that. Okay, last question here.
So, I mean,
Mike?
I agree. It's great to have a no phone policy for children. But what regime do you see as better than our status quo? You know, Churchill said democracy is the worst of all systems except all the other ones. We can't have entrepreneurs go before a committee before they launch every company. You can't have academics go before a committee before they start a research project. And I don't think you want the Trump administration determining which AIs people can use. So what concrete thoughts do you have along those lines? What's a better system that's actually functionally going to be better than, oh, heck, let's just see what happens?
So I mentioned one is that we have to restore liability. The fact that we allow tech companies to kind of get a waiver from liability is really scandalous to me, okay? First, we have to have liability, and that will temper some of their move fast and break things. Wait a minute, you're liable if you break things, okay? And that's one thing. The other thing is, okay, here we are. We're not, we didn't ask, nobody, ChatGPT, OpenAI did not ask for permission to get started. But now we are seeing what AI companions, what are the possibilities of AI companion. Now we can say, for example, slow down. AI companions not for minors, okay? This is dangerous. By now we have seen enough that I think we don't need to have super duper scientific confidence in this. We can say, this looks risky, let's slow down there. No, we couldn't do it a priori. I completely agree with you, that doesn't work. But now, it didn't take long. We are remember, 2022. We are just about 4 years, 3 years into this. And by now we are seeing the consequences and we say, slow down, slow down. Thank you very much. You're all invited to reception outside.
So many thanks to Moshe. We would like to thank all of you who are here. We would like to thank all of you who attended this talk virtually, because there are many people who attended virtually, and invite those of you who are here to join us in the reception outside.
And even the people who are remote, come on, there is a nice reception.